Hey, I'll try tonight not to walk around too much when I talk, but I have a hard time holding still, so I'll be pacing back and forth. And one thing will be to find out if Joe's clicker actually works on the slide. So my talk tonight is in management's role in MRI safety. And I have to admit that a few months ago when Brenda approached me about giving a talk on tonight's subject, my initial reaction was one of concern.
Ours too.
But the concern I had was trying to talk about safety for 60 minutes to keep everybody awake, because I've sat through my share of safety presentations before, and quite often, even though the subject is very important, the material can be very dry and boring. So I'll try tonight to present information in a lively, upbeat fashion that hopefully will keep you guys awake. And when you leave here tonight, you'll hopefully have some value. So let's see if this works.
Correct side.
Oh, what's the right side? Oh, left. Yeah. Okay.
Upside down.
So a little quick agenda, introduction we're doing now. In a couple minutes I'll do a background on my experience in MR and safety. Objective is pretty simple. The first one is keep everybody awake. And then the second one is to present. This is an HRE meeting. We're all, I assume, in management or leadership roles, or most of us are. And I really think that when it comes to safety in any organization, it's important for management to drive that safety. So I want to present tonight's presentation from the perspective of management, what our role and responsibility is. We'll talk about MRI accidents, kind of how prevalent accidents are in MRI. Is there an issue with it? We'll do a brief review of MRI physics. It won't be a Stephen Hawking type review. It'll be very simple. We'll do a root cause analysis of the most infamous MRI accident, which actually, unfortunately, this is the 10-year anniversary of the Columbini accident. Then we'll touch on some ACR and J-code guidelines for MRI safety. And then at the end, I want to wrap things up with near misses that I've experienced in my life, or my career. And I think near misses can be excellent because I think they make you focus much more on safety than if you just hear somebody talk about a what-if scenario. And that should be entertaining too, because I've got a few good stories. So, whoops, I have to go back here. Well, actually, I'll go back on my background. I've been MRI tech for 8 years, last 2 years of which have been at Overlake Hospital as a supervisor. Prior to my time in MRI, I spent 13 years at Boeing as a quality assurance inspector. Now, as a QA inspector, my main function was to inspect the quality workmanship both on components inside the plant that were going to be put on the airplane, and then also on the flight line this airplane was getting ready to fly. And then prior to my time at Boeing, I spent 4 years in the U.S. Army as a helicopter engine mechanic. And as an engine mechanic, we either removed and replaced the engines, or we tore them all the way down, rebuilt them, put them back on. So as I was putting together the material for tonight's talk, it dawned on me that for the last 25 years, I've had a career centered directly in safety, one way or another. Whether it's the safety of helicopters, airplanes, or patients. So then I thought to myself, well, during those 25 years, what elements have I observed personally that influence safety in an organization? I boiled it down to two main elements. First one is the person doing the job. Obviously, you have to be confident in what you're doing. You have to know your job. And then you have to be conscientious enough to perform your job in a safe manner. That's pretty straightforward. But the second component is a bit more abstract, and that's management's role in safety. And I firmly believe that management has to drive safety, it has to be driven from the top down into the organization. And I think management needs to start by fostering a culture of safety in your organization. And then once you have that culture of safety, you have to establish a culture of safety. Then once you have that culture of safety established, you have to foster it. I'll give you a quick example. In Germany, my first 2 years in the Army, I was in Germany, and our unit had an excellent safety record, and an excellent culture of safety. And one reason I think we had a policy, very simple. When major repair was done on that helicopter, whether it was engine rebuild, transmission rebuild, the mechanic who did that repair flew with the test pilot on the very first flight. And actually, that was great motivation because there's a lot of nuts and bolts in helicopters. You didn't want to be at 5,000 or 7,000 feet trying to remember if you applied the correct amount of torque to all those nuts and bolts. So that's just one example where I think management can greatly influence safety. Now, the first question we should ask is how much is there a problem, MRI safety? Well, statistically, it's not, if you look at it this way. It's estimated we did 30 million scans in the U.S. last year. And not surprisingly, the U.S. led the way. it's projected that we do 92 MRI scans per every 1,000 population we have. Europe does 43 scans per 1,000. And as I was putting this PowerPoint together, I couldn't help but visualize President Obama sitting at his desk, right? Going over the same data, thinking, okay, I know how I'm going to reduce the healthcare costs. So in the coming years, we'll probably see that number go down if he has anything to say about it. Now let's see if we can get rid of the.
Just move it.
Yeah, but how do you move it? Well, left will go to the next slide.
No.
Joe,
Are you sure?
technical assistance.
Help desk.
Yes, we bring a help desk with us everywhere we go.
So out of 30 million exams, now 2009 is the latest data we have, but 230 accidents per 30 million equates to a very small number, 0.000008%. Now these are reported accidents, though. So you have to ask yourself, is every organization reporting their accidents? Probably not. So I made an adjustment. I figured for every accident reported, we could safely say 4 accidents didn't get reported. So if you do that, 230 times 5, you get 1,150, which seems pretty big, but still, it's 0.0004%. So statistically, MRI is very safe. That's the good news. Now the bad news, though, is that MRI accidents have been increasing greatly in the last 6 years. 2004, you had under 50 accidents reported. 2009, you had 230 accidents. So that's almost a 5-fold increase in those 6 years. Now, your first thought might be, hey, we're probably doing more MRIs now than we were in 2004. And that's true. In 2000, it was estimated we were doing 20 million. I didn't get the numbers from 2004, but even if we go off 20 million, we're doing a 50% increase, yet we have a 5-fold increase in accidents. So something else is accounting for that. And as we go through these slides, hopefully we can figure that out. Now, here comes our little review of MRI physics. Now, I'll apologize for any MRI techs in here that already know this stuff. But I know that these meetings are made up by comprised different people, so I would like to have a... They're all compromised.
We're compromised everyone.
Yeah, so anyway, I'll go over the basic physics and for maybe laymen that aren't real familiar, because it's important to understand what we're dealing with as MRI techs to understand the concern. In fact, as an MRI tech, one of your first things you learn is you better find a way to explain how MRI works to your patients, because you'll be asked that 3 or 4 times a week. Now, the question we normally get asked is, what's the difference between MRI and CT? Now, for those patients, I have a 30-second answer I give them. I try to keep it simple. I say, well, in CT, we send thin slices of X-ray through your body. X-rays travel through your body. They're collected by a photosensor. That information goes to the computer, makes a picture. In MRI, we send energy into your body absorbs it. We turn it off. Your body gives it back to us. We make a picture. And because every tissue gives off energy at a certain rate, the computer can tell what it's looking at. So that placates about half the people. Of course, well, actually, the first question I say, how much radiation will you receive? And I say, well, at our site, none. But I can't tell you about the people across the street. We have a newest machine. I don't know how many. So, now the second question people ask, they'll be inquisitive. They'll say, yeah, but how does MRI work? So for these people, I give a 90-second explanation. I say, okay, when your body goes inside the machine, your hydrogen protons lined up north and south, all the way from your toes to your head. So your protons are lined up like this. Then we send radio waves, we send energy in the form of radio waves to the area we want to look at. If this is your knee, we send the radio waves in here. Well, at a certain frequency, we'll get resonance to occur with those protons, hence MRI, magnetic resonance imaging. Now this is just like if you take a wine glass and you run your finger across the top. If it's good crystal, it's not plastic. And you get it to hum. So once those protons start resonating, they'll actually bend over out of the way. Then we turn off the energy, and the magnet pulls those protons back up. Well, as they line back up, they also give back the energy they just received. We collect that energy with an antenna. If I'm doing somebody's knee, I'll say, this is the knee coil. This is basically an antenna going around your knee. The antenna picks up that signal, sends it to the computer. The computer makes a picture, so it's pretty simple. I will tell you, I had this gentleman one time. He was about 27, 28, nice guy. And prior to his exam, he started talking about MRI. And after about 15 seconds, I realized this guy knew his MRI physics. After about 30 seconds, I realized he knew more than I knew about MRI. So I asked him, I said, how is it you came to be so well versed in MR? Well, it turned out he was a PhD student, and he was writing his